could be yours, dream come true. A space that's waiting just for you. The walls are ready to hold your story. This could be yours, dream come true. A space that's waiting just for you. The walls are ready to hold your story. This could be.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of The Connection Currency. I'm very excited to have you here. And I'm very excited for my guests. I'm always excited for people I know on here, so this is wonderful. The Connection Currency, if you haven't ever tuned in before, I talk about in our world of noise and hustle that there's connections when you're shoving business cards at people. It's just not pushing through. You just don't get to know those people in the room. There's always good people in the room. So that real growth comes from a deeper connection, and not the performance that goes on when we're pushing business cards. There's no right, wrong, polished answer. It's all authentic. I don't do any editing. Nothing is cut. So at this point, I'm going to give my trigger warnings. There could be strong language. If you're averse to that, jump off now. There could be triggers that we talk about, and that just happens. So as I've said before, if there's something that's particularly triggering to you, maybe check the transcript, which will sit in YouTube. That's why I have it on YouTube as well. Check the transcript. If you're okay with everything, then jump on, watch us, listen to us, however you find us. My reason for doing this is I'm just really curious behind what lights up business owners. Some of us are doing it quietly. Some of us are tired. Some of us are exceeding beyond our wildest dreams, and we're still doubting ourselves. We still have that imposter syndrome. So these are some of the things we talk about. All I'm hoping for out of it, for me and everybody else, is that we just end up with a really aligned community that is genuine, authentic, supports each other, connects, there's empowering or inspires others or motivates others just to connect in that authentic way that you might then want to reach out and do business with them. You might find that they talk about things that align with you. And that's what I'm hoping to create in this community. So, without a further ado, I would love to welcome the beautiful Sorita Mcgrane to the podcast. Welcome,
Hello.
Sorita. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so good to be joining you.
I'm so pleased to have you here. Okay, we'll jump into it. Now, I ask the same questions of everybody because the answers are just so different and amazing. What point did you end up that you went, hang on a second, I'm in business, I love what I do, and I'm going to do this. So tell us a bit about your journey there.
Sure. Well, I guess it's been, for me personally, my journey into business has probably just happened over the last couple of years. I've been around a small business for a while. My husband owned a real estate business, so often by default as a partner, it's like a family business, and you can be quite involved and understand what that experience is like. You're not always working right in the business, but I worked across the public sector, so I've been really lucky to work. Well, I started actually in education and worked in the mining sector as a young university cadet. And I ended up moving into economic development in the last probably 10 years or so. So I've had great fun working at all three levels of government, local, state and federal, in economic development, and really building my skill and my passion around driving economic outcomes in regional and city economies. And so I actually transitioned that passion and experience into consulting. And so what I do is I work for myself. I'm a consultant in economic development. And so that has kind of come into my life in the last, I think I'm in my second year now, and it's been such an amazing experience. And I guess it's one of those things I found myself kind of in between opportunities. I'd stepped away from something because there was a change in the structure and some decisions in Canberra that I was like, I don't think I want to, stay in this space. And my husband actually said to me, well, you've been doing this work in industry development and economic development and regional economies, building ecosystems, and working across all these different sectors. Why can't you just do that for yourself, and why don't you step into that space of consulting? So
Yeah.
I had a little bit of time with another colleague who had an Indigenous consulting firm in the city in Brisbane, and that was great. That kind of, I mean, I've obviously, like, working in economic development, particularly at local government, I've worked with consultants. We've procured or commissioned different pieces of work, whether it's research pieces or feasibility studies. We do lots of those things in the field of economic development, and so we're wanting to always, be making data-driven decisions, and we're doing project design, methodology, and delivery. So we often will call on other people outside of organizations to help us with that. So yeah, I thought, well, that's a great point, my love. Why don't I give it a try? And so that was really how, as I said, I've been around small business for many, many years, either in my role supporting small business development and capacity building, or also, with the family business. So it did seem like the next natural step. And I think, like anybody, I'm sure it's not a unique feeling when you step out on your own, that are kind of consistently questioning yourself, and you're doing really well and you have a great pipeline. And then, I'm sitting there having a cup of coffee and thinking, hang on, in 3 months' time, the pipeline that is currently in train is done. So what's happening after that? What's coming after that? So I think it's been a really enjoyable experience. And yeah, that's how I kind of stepped into really being in that space of working for myself and relying on myself. And yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, and you've worked as a consultant. You've been working with South Pacific regions, which is really great with their Indigenous communities as well.
Yeah, I have been working with supporting another firm in Southeast Queensland, and yeah, doing some work with um, Papua New Guinea, and building the capacity of some of their consultants or business hubs that support small businesses in their provinces. So kind of like, I guess, building the capacity of the people who are helping. So I've been, yeah, doing some cool stuff around that
Yeah.
through the federal government. And
Yeah.
Indigenous economic development here as well is, I guess, an area of expertise. So I've working in economic development, there's opportunities to then, like in any occupation, you can filter or hone those skills into something more specific. So I've been able to work across a few particular industries: food and agribusiness, manufacturing, the space economy in Queensland, the beef strategy in Queensland, and then, of course, workforce development and Indigenous economic development. So a lot of what I do in my consultancy now is, really focused on driving Indigenous outcomes for Indigenous economic participation and prosperity, and really making sure that the Indigenous business sector is being supported and growing. The Indigenous business sector is the fastest growing sector in Australia, and of that sector, we're seeing more and more female founders. So, it's an exciting space to work in, and it's something that's really important to me. I am a First Nations person. I'm a Torres Strait Islander, and what we know and what the data tells us is that if we can change people's economic participation and drive prosperity outcomes for First Nations people, then that we're really supporting that self-determination piece. And so everything I do, every piece of work that I consider that is, comes across my desk, partners that I'm working with, I'm always looking for, is there a generational impact? That's what really drives me in the work that I do. Like, how is this changing the legacy of mob in Australia and in cities and regions? And, because communities where everybody is thriving are the most healthy.
Yeah, I love that. And I love your passion behind it. And I can see that's the part that lights you up
Yeah.
always. I can hear it and I see it. So there's things that light us up in business and life. There's
Mhm.
hard times. And like just being new to your own small business, when you things like when you talk about that pipeline, that supply chain of what work is coming through. Um, Business starts out like that, but funnily enough, you get to the point where you're like, oh, not another one. There's more work coming in. Like, and in the beginning, you do very much. You seem like any small business is like that. A micro sole trader, it's like, oh, okay, I need to think about where my next thing's coming from. But you will get to the point where you don't need to think about it, and you're like, is that come around again already? What? Is that
Yeah.
been a year since I last did that? So I'm really excited, and your passion shines through, so there won't ever be any problems with that. Um, but when things are hard, and our energy can be zapped, it can be life or business. When things are hard, what do you do? What keeps you going? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I feel very blessed. I have a really supportive husband, but what is awesome is that he's been a business owner. He's had a successful business. He's been successful, and he's a really great sounding board. I guess, if you're in business and perhaps your partner hasn't had that experience, obviously they're going to be supportive and encouraging, but it's great to have someone who can actually listen to the situation and perhaps give you some advice. And so I actually find he's like a bit of a role model in that space to me, and I really love being in his success. That I'm a recipient of his success, which is lovely. And so that's great. Just having a supportive husband and, like, adult children who are just always, cheering me on. Um,
Cheerleader, yeah.
I think from a business perspective, one of the things that I found was very valuable, or one of the things I discovered early on, was that I had a really strong network and I nurtured that for a long, long time. And, people that know me will often say, yeah, you're really good at not burning bridges. Like, you're just, you maintain those working relationships. And that really showed when I went out on my own, because when people found out, they were just picking up the phone and, wanting to um, work with me, provide work for me. And so you're right, actually. What I've found is that the work does come, and it's because, I think I've invested in those relationships over a period of time. And also, I just try to be good at what I do, and, combine the passion with the technical knowledge. And, bring those to the table with my clients and with my partners. So I think it's also just reminding yourself, you have to check in and remind yourself of what you've achieved so far.
Yes.
And, you think, look, I've secured this work. I've built this pipeline once before. I can do that again.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, what keeps me going. And, what gets me out of bed in the morning in the context of the work that I do, as I said, it's making a difference and having impact. And, I obviously have a deep understanding of Australia's history and, the current wealth legacy generationally of First Nations people in Australia. And, I'm just so committed to changing that legacy
Mm.
and turning it
Um,
into a positive prosperity legacy. So that really, really keeps me going. And sometimes it's just like, you got to read your testimonials and you've got to go back and think about what people have said about your work, and also just be really kind to yourself. I think you've got to just remember that the work will come.
it will. It
But
will.
you know
And
what? You've got to hustle too.
yeah,
Like, even though the work is coming, you have to be responsive.
yeah.
You still have to think about, what you're providing and the how well you're offering your services. And I would just always say, like, you got to stay hungry, because you can't take for granted that it will just continue to come. And
Mm.
even if it does, you still have to kind of keep that hunger alive.
Check back with me in 5 years' time.
Yeah. Fair. So yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, that's what really
yeah,
keeps me going.
yeah.
Obviously, it's the
It's
it's the support network that I have in my life. Outside of my family, I have the most amazing, like, sisterhood of women that just keep me up, keep me going. And that's really important as well, because only other women can sometimes share the experience, of you. So I do have women who are business owners in my circle. I also have a lot of women who are like in professional roles and just understand the challenges of operating, and they're high performers. So yeah, I think that's really important as well.
I and those opportunities will come because I was sort of like, how can I help Sarita? When you said you'd gone out on your own, and like your passion has always resonated with me. I've always gotten that from you, even before you and I sort of knew each other. Um, and I thought when you said you'd stepped out on your own that morning that we had that discussion, you said, "Oh, I'm actually out doing this." And I was like, what opportunities are coming my way that can open doors for you in other ways? Hence, when I said to you, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And you grabbed it and ran with it, and we're still running with it. It's just gone
We
a
still
little
are.
quiet. It's gone a little quiet, but it's happening in the background. Um, but yeah, that passion was there that you I could see that passion in you that you want to make an impact, you want to make a difference, and people will reach out to you, and those other opportunities that are coming that comes into any of our worlds we'll be sharing with you because we know you're a good person and you do good, and you will always do good. So when you talk about your sisterhood and that, I love that, and I've seen that sort of in recent times and everything. How did you connect? How do you connect with people? Like, how do you, you know, we do go through those things, and probably working in the Office of Economic Development, you get those skills where you walk into rooms where you don't know people, you feel that maybe it's not your crowd. How do you push through that? How do you connect? You've
Yeah.
talked about those mentors and peers, the good people but how do you connect with other people um, to have those conversations, more deeper conversations around what you do?
Yeah, I think sometimes you have to be intentional about it. So if you're out and about networking and you're attending things and you're putting yourself out there, connections can happen organically as well. You might find, but if you're operating in a certain way and at a certain level and you're drawing those things to you, you will attract the right people to you organically, I believe. You've got to be there. Got to be present. You've got to be in the game. You've got to be out there playing. But I think it's also okay to be really intentional about it, and have a look around in terms of who's in your regional or city network, and reach out to people. Just talk. Literally reach out to people. People want to help.
Yeah.
In my experience, people want to help you, and you might think they don't have capacity, or it looks like they're above whatever level you perceive yourself to be, which is
Yeah.
a whole nother podcast. Um, so, but like
Or below. Some people,
reach out
yeah,
to people and just ask the question. Say, hey, this is my journey at the moment, and I just really love what you're doing, and I'd love to understand more about how you got there. And often people who experience success, there are people on the periphery who step back and they're like, oh, well, oh, yeah, you've got this success. And it's like, well, ask me how I did it.
yeah,
Ask me
yeah,
what the journey was, ask me what my learnings were. And I've not met many people who have experienced success professionally or even personally who aren't willing to, create space to share that with somebody else. So I think first you've just got to be out and about. I moved to Moreton Bay in like 2021. I was 40, and I had this amazing network of women where I lived in Toowoomba, friends and professional women. And I'm like, I'm moving to a whole new city at 40 years old, and I don't
yeah,
know anyone, and I'm losing this part of my life that is really important to me. So I had to build, and I didn't know anyone, so I had to build a whole new network. So obviously, being an employee in the first instance is helpful with that. You do make a few friends at work, but I think when you're working for yourself, you've got to, you have to be out there. You still have to be strategic about how you invest your time, because you have to remember no one's paying you to be anywhere anymore. Like if you go to an event, enjoy it, but think about what the outcome is. What are you wanting to achieve? Who are you wanting to connect with? If
mm,
you're going to an event, also don't be afraid if to contact the event organizers and say, are you comfortable, or are you releasing a list of attendees? And have a look at the list of attendees and think about, right, oh, there's that person I've been wanting to connect with. So I think get yourself out there, but yeah, be intentional about it. And also don't be afraid to, to ask those people to help you. And when I say a whole nother podcast, but you have to also believe that you are worthy to be
Yeah.
there and to be in that space and to be around those particular people. I have you might have heard me say this on a panel once, but one of my favorite things that I've heard in the last 6 months, Michelle Obama say in an interview, and I can't remember who it was with. I think it's the guy who does the Diary of a CEO. But she was talking to him, and he said, what's the scam? And she's like, the scam is that you don't belong.
Yeah.
Like, it's a scam. They're fooling you. And she's like,
Yeah.
she said, and I mean, I guess it's easy for Michelle Obama to say, but as a woman of color, there have been spaces that I think even in her position would be very intimidating to be in. And she said, I just decided, like, I am worthy. I belong here, and I'm going to sit at these tables and I'm going to run this shit. And that is what I'm doing. And so you have to believe that you bring something to the table, and you have to believe that you're worthy of being in these spaces and approaching these people and creating networks with these people. And if you have that belief, then that's going to take you a long way. And look, no one's ever said that I wasn't a confident extrovert, so I cannot speak on behalf of people who
Yeah.
aren't willing to stand up and talk in front of a room like I am. But yeah, that, to me, like, that's how you build that sisterhood. And it's a bit scary, and if you are doing it from scratch in a new place, or if you're doing it as a business owner as opposed to having been in an organization, or
Yeah.
but it's like, you're here, you're doing it. Like,
Yeah.
what have you got to lose?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so passionate about giving back and doing so many different things, especially around that Indigenous financial literacy. And I love that as well, that that's part of you. And you're on the board for Many Rivers. Do you want to talk about anything there that those passions that light you up there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for I think a lot of professional people should think about or consider if being a non-executive board director is something that you'd like to do. It's not a joke though; like, it's pretty serious business. If you're a board director, there's a lot of responsibilities that sit with you, but from an opportunity to be able to provide your experience and insight into helping an organization grow. I mean, Many Rivers is a values-based organization, and they're doing really amazing things to support small businesses, Indigenous business owners, female business owners, and people in regional and remote communities. And so, being a board director with Many Rivers has been really rewarding, and I see it as, I guess it fits into the puzzle of the things that I want to invest my time in and that I'm really passionate about. And similar to Economic Development Australia, I'm on the board of EDA, and we are a more broadly across the economic development sector in Australia. But that's about driving these outcomes in city and regional economies and regional development and having thriving communities. So again, the work that we're doing in supporting economic development practitioners around the country is really important as well. And I deliver Indigenous economic development training to economic development practitioners for EDA. So, that's really great as well, because I'm really able to work with people all over Australia and, providing some direction around how to achieve economic participation for First Nations people, and how do we make sure Indigenous businesses are participating in supply chains in regions and in states, and beyond, and all contributing to that growing, I guess, regional and city economies, in terms of, it's not just this trickle down approach. It's like community wealth building, and we're building everyone's capability and capacity and access to opportunity, and that's how we make strong communities.
We do, we
I
do.
love
And I
in that
love
way.
that you
Makes sense.
you are advocating as part of that EDA of getting those supply chains strong in everybody who, Indigenous people who are supplying whatever,
Mm,
because, and I know with another mutual friend of ours, Kylie,
mm,
um, getting people to accept Indigenous organizations that, and then getting the Indigenous people to have the confidence to go, I
yeah.
need to be part of your supply chain. Making that connection and making that happen is it can be life changing for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. And look, it's not a simple. There are some complexities around growing the capability of the Indigenous business sector. And some of that is not related just to capability. It's about breaking down some of the barriers that still exist that, prevent people from creating those opportunities or that access. And, we have many, many, many sophisticated, mature, high functioning, high performing, very successful Indigenous businesses in this region, in Queensland, and across Australia. And what the data is saying about that sector is that they're just contributing more and more and worth investing in. And it's just, there's still some, we need to still just kind of challenge some people's thinking around what's possible.
Yeah,
And, wealth and prosperity for Indigenous people in Australia is highly possible. It's on the cards, and there's lots of people who are working really hard to create that generational impact. So I really enjoy working in that space. I mean, the financial literacy, that's something that I'm really passionate about generally. I think in Australia, there's some pretty scary um, data around like the
yeah,
position that people are in financially, and obviously there's external forces that impact the cost of living. But I often say like, give me anyone's budget and I'll find some money in there. But it is hard, it's really hard for families
yeah,
at the moment, and so, but it's just not always something that's been part of our culture. We're not necessarily taught how
yeah,
to budget, how to manage money. I mean, I say to people, how long do you take to plan a holiday? How long do you take to plan a 1 week holiday? Like literally months and months and months. But people won't sit down for 2 hours and map out their budget and really think about, what their financial goals are. So in terms of supporting, Indigenous communities and mob in financial literacy, again, that's part of that work around, building participation and prosperity. But I think for every household in Australia, I'm really passionate about people just setting financial goals and increasing their budgeting skills. And like, it's just about building financial security and reducing that part of stress in your life, because financial stress just permeates through.
it,
But I could
it's
talk about this for a
through
really long
everything.
time, Robin.
No, it permeates through everything. And business owners, um, I mean, I'll be honest, it often sort of, and that's why I was excited to help Wayne with the business planning course for Uni SC,
Mm,
because I said to him, he was like, do you think this is a good idea? I said, it's fantastic because all that work I have to do in businesses, I won't have to do. I can just I can just help them with their applications and the formalities around different things like that. Because I go into a lot of businesses, and I say, we'll need the last 3 years of financials, and then they try and explain different things in their financials to me, and like everything's everywhere, and they haven't done them,
mm,
and I'm like, some of them even, I work with them for a long time before we put in any applications, be it a tender or a grant. I work
mm,
with them for some time because they don't actually realize what some things in their business are costing, and they don't know what their products are actually costing them and how much their actual net profit is off the back of that. So how much they're
yeah,
actually making. And some of them you go in and you go and they're so stressed and they need more employees, and I'm like, well, you can get another employee, and you can actually get a bit of help from the government to get that employee. Others think they're making loads of money, and when you break it down, it's like, well, you're not making that much money.
yeah,
So then let's go back and look at what your costs are. Can we streamline some things a little bit better? And you can always, when you say about finding money, you can always do that. You can always go, why are you spending money on this? You don't need that.
mm,
Take that
yeah,
away. and your
Absolutely.
product's worth more. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately, I think what often happens is people have not mastered the craft of managing their household income, then transition into business ownership. And it just because you say, I am now a business owner, it doesn't mean that something clicks in your brain. And there's not a cash flow fairy that comes along and says, right, you are now a master in cash flow and, creating financial sustainability in your small business. If you don't have those skills and understand how to track your expenses and set those financial goals, then yeah, that's a bit of a problem, and it doesn't just go. It's not a skill that just comes to you. So I
no.
think that always really scares me, because people who don't have those skill sets in a personal way, it
Mm,
doesn't just suddenly change. So
no.
that's why it's really important, that we do have agencies that are working with small businesses around their capability to manage their business. And, I mean, at the end of the day, cash flow is everything. So having a positive cash flow model as a small business, if you can, is obviously number one. But also just setting your financial goals as well. Like what do you want to achieve
Mm,
um,
mm,
in the year? How much do you want to make? Like
yeah.
what are your benchmarks? What's your measure of success? And that can look different for everybody. But even if it's I want to be cash neutral because it's about the work for me, that is
Yeah.
absolutely not. It's about the work for me, but I also like pretty shoes and things like that. So
Yeah.
I'm a
So
girl.
some of
I
those,
mean, hello.
you know, so it's really interesting when you say that because when I went out on my own, I had different ones say to me, "Well, you'll have a safe place to fall if you fail." Because I can go back to what I was doing and
Yeah,
do the bigger stuff. And I was like, yeah, but it doesn't light me up the bigger stuff. And then
yeah,
one of my girlfriends, the aha moment was she said to me, what do you want to get out of it? Like from how much you're charging people, you're charging them a lot less because you're doing it with small businesses.
mm,
What do you want to get out of it? And I said, well, if I could get a new handbag every now and then would be nice, or a new pair of shoes. Um, and we had that conversation now, and the joke was how many nice new handbags could you have? And I know Share the Dignity every year
yeah.
gets a lot of my handbags that are hardly used,
No,
but
I
like
buy
you
a
use them
lot.
for a
I just
year.
move them on. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
as you go along, she used to say to me, "Oh, new handbag, you're doing well." Like that was she used to mark my make of success was, "Oh, you got more work coming through. You got your brand new shoes." You know, we joke about
exactly.
it. And now I'm like, "Yeah, I don't need any more handbags or shoes." And you still want to,
I mean, obviously, I don't encourage too much frivolous
no,
spending and things that you don't need to spend money on. Like, we need to treat ourselves,
yeah.
and
But I
but
was like, if I can keep,
we
I've
do
got
have a bit of a excessiveness, and I think abundance, unfortunately, sits a little bit too high on the scale of people's practice, and often people don't really understand how much they're actually spending,
no. No, and
things that
that
they're
and that
using.
was my goal. Every time an invoice came in, I was going to buy myself a new handbag. So I went, well, if I get an invoice once a month that pays, I'll buy myself a
Yeah,
new.
but I also find like when you have a small little like that moves as well. The dial moves, and you're like, well, that's not really what I'm focused on anymore. And the vision gets bigger.
Yeah,
And for me, it's also like being successful allows you to support other people, and invest time. And sometimes time is the more valuable currency, if you're busy. And so even though you might want to give time or give your expertise, at times, sometimes it's, well, financially is how I'm going to support this particular cause that I think is
yeah,
really important, and, really that really speaks to my heart and what my values are. And being successful enables that. And so for me, I'm always like, well, it's selfish not to want to do really well in your business, because obviously you can create that success for yourself, but then you have capacity to do more.
yeah.
And so that's something that's always been important to us as well.
And that comes back to even being on boards. I know the impact, you can give back a one-on-one situation, but on a
Mm,
board, you can give back to masses and you can
mm,
have a massive impact. And and being on boards or committees or whatever for me was never about a resume thing like you. It's not about being on your resume. It's about what can I give back to most amount of people and how can I give it back? And often a board will, like that board position will be calling out to you
Mm,
because of the impact you can have, and like with you, it's the impact you can have, the barriers you break down, that advocacy as well um, comes and you can just leave that legacy to so many more people.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like how do you have the most impact by working smarter, not necessarily harder. So yeah, it is a really good way to give back, but it's also a good way to diversify your income because once you build your experience, you can
Yeah.
actually, you like paid board roles are great as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you get that experience, you can have that and yeah. And I'm sort of a little bit like you. I like to balance my worlds in I like to give back and I like to do these other things and how can I help others grow and where's my legacy there? Because when you're gone, you're gone.
That's
But if you're leaving that legacy and that impact, hopefully we're all making the world a better place for everybody.
that's the goal.
Oh, I've loved absolutely chatting to you, Sarita. You're always so inspiring. Yeah,
Thank you.
hopefully we'll catch up soon in person. So thank you for being on here. Thank you very much. And
Oh,
I'll,
thank you
I'll
for
share your
having me.
bio and your links and everything if anybody wants to reach out to you. Um,
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. That was deadly. I really enjoyed that.
thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Bye.
Robin. Bye.